There we go. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Do I have everything in the frame? Yes. Welcome to my channel. It's not December, it's May. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author, and we're here today to do a double tag. Before we get started today, you may notice that my voice is a little different. I'm not sick per se, but the allergies persist, and it's been a very long week ending up on Saturday, so I'm feeling a bit eh, just and I don't know, kind of failure-y. So if you're watching this video and you haven't commented in a while, please maybe contribute the last time you were feeling meh. What got you out of it? I'm doing my tea, I'm doing my books, I'm doing my journaling. It's not really working. I just need to rest. But if you're here and you have like a secret way that gets you out of the blahs, please let me know in the comments. Shannon stopped by to hit the like button and is at a conference, so I hope that's going well. And Leslie is here and said, "Oh no, not allergies." I know, I know. So, the two tags we're going to be doing today are the quarterly reading tag, which is basically the end of Q1, which is like a month ago. This is how I roll with tags. And I was tagged by Jen's Reading Life. So, thank you very much for that. It's going to be a pretty quick one. I've got some favorites and whatnot to go through. And then also, something's making noise. The This or That tag, which is by the lovely people who bring us People April. That's Roz at Skylar Jandeling About the Books and Elizabeth at Bouquins and Books. So I was tagged by Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff. And so I'll be going through that. It's a little bit more chatty. So we'll see whether I like this or that. And I'll be tagging a few people for each one. But feel free to do these tags if you feel called to. Okay. Oh, we got some good answers. Leslie says, vitamins. I only take D, vitamin D, and maybe I need to expand. My favorite snacks. I am low on chocolate, so that's probably a warning light. And a comedy special usually helps me feel a tad bit better. Comedy special is a good one. I should write that on my list. And Cat Paw, hello, says hand sewing. Oh, you mean this bag of, like, mending that's been sitting there for months? Yeah, I guess I could pay attention to that. That's that's a new area. I guess I could put that in my rotation. I don't have creative projects in that area. I just have, like, to-dos. So I probably have to, yeah, switch it up a bit. Okay, so the first one, the quarterly reading tag. Why don't I put this in a banner? Complete with typos. So the first question in this tag is, how many books have you read so far? And as of yesterday, when I finished a very saucy romance, I've read 52. So it's not yet the middle of the year, which is the end of June. So I'd say I'm on track for my typical like 110, 115 for the year. That's been my usual number for the past few years. Question number 2, have you read a book so far that you loved or is 5 stars? And yes, so I looked this up in advance. There are 4 that have 5 stars so far. 2 of them are cookbooks and 2 of them are fiction. My star rating system is a bit wonky, but the 2 cookbooks were Yemek, which is the Turkish cookbook, which I've shared about, and A Good Day to Bake by Benji Benjamina Ebwehi. And that's been delightful, and I've baked several things from that. So that's great. And then the 2 fiction are We Are Not From Here, which is a story of people coming up from Central America, fleeing persecution to get into America. That was like devastating. It's so well done. And the last one was, I don't remember. I just looked it up this morning. That's okay. You can look it up on my story graph if you want. Question number 3 is, have you read any 1-star or least favorite books so far? And I don't have any 1-star books. I think the lowest I did was 2.75, which is pretty low. And I mean, I have had some least favorite books, but I don't like highlighting least favorites. You've heard them when I review them as I go. So I'll just leave that there. Question number 4, what are your most read genres? And this is very easy when you look at the stats at Storygraph. So, Jesus Christ. Okay. There was a lot of noise outside coming into the apartment above me, and now there's a lot of noise like right above my head. I'm like almost afraid someone's going to fall through the ceiling. Okay, it stopped. Of course it did. The top genres for 2024 so far are romance, historical, mystery, contemporary, memoir, history. So that was pretty expected. A lot of comfort reading and a lot of research reading. So pretty balanced, maybe. Question number 5, name a book that came out in 2023 that you want to read but still haven't. And I did this on Storygraph by looking at wish list books. So ones that I've tagged wish list that I want to read, but filtering by published from 2023 to 2023. And when I did that, I got 3 that I wanted to pinpoint that look really good. The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brianne Randall. I've seen that a couple times and almost bought it, but I haven't yet. Devil Makes 3 by Ben Fountain. I've read his nonfiction a few years ago, and it was really good. So this is his historical fiction about U.S. intervention in Haiti and like a lot of other things. So that looked really good. I offered it to the book club a couple months ago, and it was not voted on. So I'm like trying to find a way to put that on my TBR. And then Wayward by Amelia Hart, which is another sort of supernatural in fiction. I don't think it's a typical romance. I think it's like a woman coming into herself with romantic elements, which is probably my favorite ever. Then question number 6, what is a book that surprised you? And for this, I went through all the books and I actually came up with 2 nonfiction. I didn't come up with any fiction. Apparently, fiction is doing what I want it to or what I expect it to. So the 2 nonfiction would be Nowhere Exactly, which I just talked about and reviewed. And I have a tab open for MG Vasanji's Facebook page because that's apparently the only social media he does. And I was going to send him a message. I'm sure it's his press team. Send him a message that says, I just loved your book and I reviewed it and I'm giving you free publicity. You want to look at the video? Something like that. So we'll see if I do that today. And the other book was from a while back. It's called Self-Portrait in Black and White, Unlearning Race by Thomas Chatterton Williams. And this one, I'm not sure why I felt compelled to read it at that time, but it's a book about someone who's biracial and how he considers his identity. And it sort of fits with the Nowhere Exactly, but that's more about fitting in and belonging. And this is more about definition and like prejudice and interpreting. I don't know, they're very related. But the Thomas Chatterton Williams one also talks about race in the US, whereas Vasanji really focuses more on Canada and the world. So a little different lens. They're both very good, and I didn't go in expecting anything. So that was a good surprise. Question number 7, what reading goals are you not succeeding at? Well, since I started this video out with thinking about failure, I actually don't make reading goals. So I'm not succeeding at none. That's a catchy way to do it. And then the next question, number 8, is what reading goals are you succeeding at? And I guess I would say I'm reading what my heart wants. So that is a success. And yeah, so reading is doing for me what I need it to most of the time. So that's good. And then I've got the link to Jen's Reading Life's video in the description if you're curious and you want to look at someone else's answers before you answer your own. I have tagged 3 people I thought would be interested in doing this and haven't done it yet. That's Kate at Mini Book Chats, whose channel I really like the focuses of. Alana Estelle, where I am a new subscriber and like want to know more about her reading, and Lori at Books, Ink, and Paper, who I met in the chat and whose accent I love listening to. So I think they might be interesting taggies. But if you're listening to this, feel free to do it yourself and give yourself a little check-in throughout the year. So that's that. And I'm going to quickly pass on to this or that. So my little lead-in paragraph for the description is, yeah, these are old, but they're still valid. So this is actually a tag that was for the People April Readathon. And as I said at the beginning, it's May. What am I doing? Well, it's still interesting. It's about reading memoirs and biographies, and you can do that all year. So this is about what kind of those books you prefer, and you can like explain, right? So, Roz and Elizabeth, this is for you and everyone else. Question number 1, big, fat, detailed biographies or short and succinct biographies? And when I look up all the biographies, memoirs, autobiographies in Storygraph that I have read, which you can filter, there's 117, I believe. And there are instances of big, fat biographies I love and instances of short, succinct ones that I love. So this answer depends. It's really the style of the writing. I really like, and I don't think it goes into this in any other question, but I really like biographies and memoirs more probably that encompass many different angles into a person's life. So not like, here's my writing life and how I made it in the publishing industry, but like, here's this thing that really fascinated me about my hometown. And when I dug into it, it led me to research this. And then I realized it was affecting life for people there today. And then here's a sketch of someone who is dealing with that issue. And then here's how that issue is dealt with in other places. And you sort of leapfrog onto all these different points of view on the same point. And I really like that. So it's neither confined by the first or the second category. So it just depends. Question number 2, celebrity memoirs or average Joe memoirs? And my answer for this is, if it's pre-1900 celebrities, sure, I'll drink it up. If it's post-1900, don't get a celebrity in my face. I will not read it. But I'm always up for reading average Joe memoirs because I think what people notice is always a little bit different. And any decade that makes me interested in the things that are happening in the world. So, but celebrities, not so much when it's post 1900. Question 3, complete correspondence or selected letters. And when I think about reading someone's complete correspondence, I imagine you're wading through a lot of dross and you're like reading through a lot of the same things, and that could get boring. So I said selected. I'm okay with selected because depending on who selected them, you could be getting the most interesting or the most salient to a certain topic, like edited for a certain purpose or theme. And that edits out some of the dross for me. So I'm happy to have someone else do that. Hi, Emma. Thanks for hitting the like button. Happy Sunday. Question number 4, memoirs written when the events are fresh or memoirs written with hindsight? don't know if you can guess which one I prefer for this. Take a gander. Bean is sitting in the sun and looking uncertainly over here like, why did the lady stop talking? Am I supposed to do something? No. Okay, no guesses. I would say hindsight, because I definitely like people analyzing and reflecting and processing their emotions and then giving us their thoughts rather than fresh from the event, because I think like emotions may be higher, you know, there may be like traumatic, how do I say this? If you think that you're going to get a better, more accurate memory right after the event rather than in hindsight, that might be true, but it might be colored by shock and trauma if it's a big, horrific event. And so, like, it might be less reliable. So I think it's interesting to think about, but I don't think it's definitive one way or the other. So I like thinking about people processing and reflecting and then giving us their views of things after the fact with hindsight. Number 5, gossipy biographies or scholarly biographies. I said this depends, because when I think of gossipy, I think, well, number one, I think unsubstantiated rumors, which, I mean, isn't my thing. It's kind of like reading historical fiction that's way off base. It's like, why am I reading this? It's polluting my mind with inaccuracies. Um, but I mean, sometimes it's useful. So I did just finish as a research book the memoirs of Greville. Greville. I was mixing up the names. And he was someone who was like grandson of an earl or whatever and highly placed in society. And so knew all these artists, knew all these scholars, knew all these people in parliament, and, understood their references and wrote his memoirs. So I was sort of combing through those to see how someone in that position would have received the news about abolition or the reform bill. And there was a lot of dross, exactly what I was explaining about selected letters or complete. And those were selected. So I think it was a bit of a mismatch because I was looking for certain things and they may have been edited out because they weren't titillating or exciting or whatever, for the imagined audience of these letters. But what are you going to do? I'm not going to go back and read the complete correspondence. I'm just going to look at other people's remembrances of those times. Like I went through Archibald Allison's, and now I'm going through something Maria Josepha, the wife of somebody. She's a little earlier. So yeah, I'm just sort of like combing through different people in different places to see what comes up. Might find some gold in the pan. We've got a Nicole's Bookish Nook saying hi, and an Anita A.F. Stewart saying hi. Welcome. I'm on my second tag, everybody. We're on question number 6 now, which is, do you prefer diaries of ordinary life or diaries of extraordinary events? And I mean, the lag means that I can't really ask people to guess. I think that it's fairly obvious if you know what I write. But I actually said both. So an example of this is I really like the Persephone book, Few Eggs and No Oranges by Vera Hodgson. She had a diary for 5 years during World War II that was published pretty much exactly as she wrote it. And it's about living through the Blitz and the conditions during World War II in London. And there's a lot of small things that are like endearing and small things that are interesting and surprisingly little sort of processing. But when you think about it, like, what are you going to do you don't know how it's going to come out. You don't know if your side's going to win. So like obviously it's just uncertainty and trying to keep the fears at bay. And so that's got some appeal to it as well, listening to someone else's struggle in the moment to go on with normalcy. So that's a book I recommend. It's both ordinary and extraordinary. JC in the house. Hello. And then everyone's saying hi, hi, hi. Question number 7, arty memoirs or sporting memoirs? And I'm going to be a rebel and say neither. Artist memoirs, I think, are going to be typically too self-involved for me to read, and sporting memoirs, since I have no interest in sports unless there's like a different nonfiction view or lens, like not interested. And I would say watch Leslie's review of her latest sporting memoir that was supposed to be a little bit sociological, but didn't end up holding her interest. So question number 8, gritty autobiographical writing or inspirational autobiographical writing? And here, I think if you know me, you know, I'm going to say inspirational. I've read much more inspirational writing about here's how I came into my art, here's how I traveled the world, here's how I uh, changed my belief system, whatever. Lots of different examples there. But gritty writing, it makes me think of like, well, I haven't read On the Road. It makes me think about men because gritty reads masculine. And I feel like I don't want to listen to their voices being macho and gritty. And so like it's a no for me. I don't know. Is that biased and prejudiced? Perhaps, but we're gonna keep going. Question number 9, biographies of historical figures or biographies of contemporary figures? Oh, I guess the gritty sorry, to go back a second, gritty autobiographical. The Full Tilt book that I read for the Irish readathon about the woman cycling through Afghanistan and Iran, that's pretty gritty, and she goes into a lot of detail about the weather and the hardships and, like, the stomach bugs, and it's really not my thing. So even when it's in a woman's voice, like, the humor saved it for me, but, like, the grittiness is not my idea of enjoying another person's pain, even after, you know, they come out okay. Okay, so back to historical or contemporary. Well, obviously historical. As you know from my previous answer about celebrities, I'm always more interested in people interacting with different time periods because, um, why is that? Contemporary figures. I mean, I've listened to, um Elizabeth Warren's, and that was really good. I just feel like the modern style for memoir and autobiography, at least, and this started again, and sorry if you can hear the noise, is much more about selling and persuading and cheering someone on than it is exploring their effect on society or their contribution to the movement or things like that. So that's why I'm like, "I'll wait on the contemporary." Maybe I won't be old enough to have the distance of hindsight for contemporary figures later in my life. It's okay. It's okay. Oh, hey, Just Eva. Jumping in to say, I enjoy small bits of memoirs, like On Writing by Stephen King, his little anecdotes and things. Love that sort of thing. But an entire thick boy novel, no, thank you. Yeah, actually, if you consider cookbooks in this category, like I love when I was just talking about that Very Good Salads cookbook by the falafel folks in Australia, and they have like a little explanatory or contextual couple paragraphs at the beginning of the recipe to explain why they include this dish, how they came to it, why it's important, that kind of thing. And it is sort of like memoir because you're learning about their childhood and what they value and why it's part of their business and that sort of thing. So yeah, I didn't even include cookbooks in here. I could have. I would have changed the tag a little bit. Nita says, not a memoir, but one of the best sporting historical biographies I've read is The Boys in the Boat. Oh, okay. So that's like sporting memoir times like war narrative, right? Because isn't that something about the Olympics during World War II? Self-pub with Indy. Hey, hey. And he was going to be right back. So yeah, contemporary. I'm going to go with historical. Question number 10. Memoirs of happy days or memoirs of tragic days? And for this, I've read both and enjoyed both. I think for today, I'm going to go ahead and say, let's hear about happy days, because I think we have a little bit too much focus on the tragedy of it all for the moment. Then there's a bonus prompt. The Complete Diary of Samuel Pepys. Over 4,000 pages or 116 hours and 16 minutes of audiobook. Whew. Or selections from the Diary of Samuel Pepys, which can be as short as 120 pages or 3 hours and 55 minutes of audiobook. And I'm not sure what this is teasing out from the earlier question about correspondence, but I think in this case, I would go with selections and hope that the person selecting it was a good editor and had this similar themes that would attract my interest, which is probable. So like, I'm not afraid that wouldn't happen. And as before, I've got the video that Jim gave with his answers in the description. So thank you to Jim and to Jen for tagging me in these two tags. For this one, with the People April focus, I picked a few people who read nonfiction, I think, enough to enjoy these questions. So Courtney at Tangible Reads, Justin at Triumphal Reads, and Pat at Book Chat with Pat. So I thought you might enjoy giving us your read on these decisions. And then I had a top 10. So I've read, I didn't include cookbooks, but I did have 117 memoir, biography, or autobiography in Storygraph. And so I went through and looked at my favorites, the ones that when I looked at it, I still got like a little zing of, oh, that was really good, or oh, I really like that. And so I came up with 10. Like, it was exactly 10 without any juggling. Hi, Jocelyn. Welcome. Happy Sunday. Jim is here right after I mentioned his name. That is such a coincidence. So here's my top 10 of those three categories and sort of what angle they have on it. So there's some that are more interesting because they present info and I liked learning what they presented. So maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist, her therapist, and Our Lives Revealed. It's the book in blue and yellow with like a tissue box on the front. And that's by Lori Gottlieb. And I really enjoyed learning about the interesting dilemmas or, interior thoughts of a therapist who needs her own therapist and how she sort of navigated that. I thought that was really useful when I was looking into going into therapy and seeing what I could get from it. The second one is, and these aren't in order of 10 to 1 or 1 to 10. These are ordered by like theme. So information presented that I really was interested in. Permanent Record by Edward Snowden. I don't know what he's doing now. He's got some interesting headlines where it's kind of like you see a thing and you don't know if it's totally brilliant or like totally conspiracy theory batshit crazy. But Permanent Record, I listened to, and he lays things out very convincingly and logically and rationally. And like, it is a big issue, the surveillance state nowadays. And if you're worried about AI, you should probably be worried about surveillance and private information and what happens to it and who has rights to it and all that stuff. So Permanent Record was a good one for letting people know about that. Another information one that was also in my sort of area of interest was To Speak for the Trees: My Life's Journey from Ancient Celtic Wisdom to a Healing Vision of the Forest by Diana Beresford Kroger. And of course, I've talked about this one before when I was mentioning books for Climathon, I think. And it's a memoir. She's written another one that's about living simply more recently, but that one is more scattershot and a lot of details about a lot of different facts. Whereas this one I think was presented better in terms of her childhood, the two traditional strands she studied, and then how she marries them in her career and what she values and thinks other people would be interested in learning about. And so that was really just a great way to present the information, but also make it personal. So when I was talking about the kind of memoir that I like that takes all those different points of view, for personal history that does that, I would recommend Milltown: Reckoning with What Remains by Carrie Arsenault. So she is someone who lives in Maine, and the mill town she's talking about is her hometown, and she goes into the environmental effects of having a mill, the immigration effects of people moving for labor, for jobs, the family effects of disease and ill health, the career effects of like people she's had to interact with and piss off, for example. Just lots of different layers. And so I really liked how she introduces that and grapples with it. Then I've got a theme that's like others' point of view. And so these are memoirs or biographies that introduce me to points of view that I am not used to, I did not grow up with, and I appreciate hearing from because they're opening my mind about different topics and expanding my perspective. Um, so, first one for that would be Fox and I by Catherine Raven. This is a lovely book about um, nature and wildlife. It's written by someone who she doesn't include this, but I think she's talked about it elsewhere. She's got a very different way of interacting with the world, and so she's chosen a very solitary life because I think she has anxiety and isn't comfortable interacting with people as much. And she's researched and been like a wildlife scientist. I don't remember the exact job title, but someone who like camps out, observes things, counts different pups, whatever. And she's out on her own land in Montana and develops this relationship in her head with a fox that visits her property. And so she talks about her previous experience. She talks about her growing up. She talks about all these things that she's learned and sort of how she questions assumptions that she has based on her observations of the behavior of this fox and how she feels about its presence. And I just thought that was really um, a gift to have the different viewpoint. Um, yeah, so there's that. Bookish Brian Kimmon said hello, hello. Nicole says fox. Yes, likes the foxes. I definitely recommend it. It's heavy at points and, I think open to criticism about, um, giving more agency to animals than people think is correct, but I am more on the side of, like, animals have more agency than we assume, so get out of here. Alright, so another, other point of view that I really enjoyed was A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia Elliott, and I think Leslie tells me that her new fiction book is really good. I think it's Leslie who read it and really liked it a couple months ago. Um, this is Alicia's account of sorting through, her kind of like the therapy book, her um, issues, her difficulties, deciding how much of those are like work onable, deciding how much of those are like part of her heritage, like trying to parse apart um, how to live the life she wants to with the experience and ancestral baggage and American baggage that is thrust upon her. I think it's a really brave collection of essays where she's taking um, a sort of outside look at herself. And so that enables me as an outsider to be able to see a little bit more into the experience of an Indigenous person who's walking through their culture at the same time as like trying to deal with all this garbage coming in. So, like, I really, really liked that as well. And then the third other point of view that I really liked in memoir format is called The Stopping Places: A Journey Through Gypsy Britain by Damien Lebas. And this is something I'd never thought of, but the culture of, like, tinkers, and there's various names, and some of them are outdated, and some of them are, considered slurs, but this is a person who is in that population using that name, and he talks about kind of like Nowhere Exactly. He talks about how he, grew up straddling two cultures, wanting to be modern and British, but also having family that were in this gypsy culture who migrated, who had a different view on values and what was important and priorities in terms of family and being able to move and feeling really called by both and torn apart by having to choose and turning his back on one and then wanting to go back and sort of connect with it. Um, and also considering like the prejudice that the British gypsy culture faces still in the modern era. So a lot of stuff I didn't know about and hadn't observed and hadn't hit the headlines. So hearing someone exploring that part of his past and family heritage was expansive. Was perspective expanding. Grappling for words here. The eighth book on my top 10 memoirs is but it's more of a personal history, and that is Wandering in Strange Lands, A Daughter of the Great Migration Reclaims Her Roots. So kind of similar to the last one. This one's by Morgan Jerkins, who's also a fiction writer. And so this is her account of going through a few places where she knows she has ancestral connections um, in the US and trying to find if it's true. Kind of like if you had family legends and like whispers or rumors, but you didn't have any evidence. You don't have like a genealogical background. You don't have birth certificates, but you want to inquire or interrogate this feeling that you're part of this tradition. And what is it? So Morgan Jerkins is a Black author. And so she goes into um, I think there's a culture of like rice cultivation in South Carolina that she goes into. There's Oklahoma where there's a blending of indigenous and Black cultures, and it's very difficult because people have been cut out by American laws to consider themselves as either Black or indigenous for reasons of survival. And so that was really difficult. But she finds these crazy like linkages that might prove something, but might not. And so she's just sort of adjusting to the idea of that. And she's got a couple other places that she visits. I think Louisiana and like the voodoo and hoodoo traditions there and how that plays into her background. Um, and distant families' remembrances of those things. So, like, really interesting parts of American culture when you consider that, like, American isn't just white culture. So, like, bring this into the mainstream of memoir and historical, um, experience, and I think this book needs more attention. I think it was really good. The ninth one is a bit of UK history, so just, like, my personal interest. This Time Next Year We'll Be Laughing by Jacqueline Winspear, and if you know me, I'm sure you've heard of Maisie Dobbs, the series by Jacqueline Winspear. This is less about how she comes to writing and her later life, and a lot about her childhood and young adulthood before she even started writing. So she initially went into a teaching career, but she tells us why that was her choice. And she also goes into a lot about why her family grew up the way it did, and why she has a character who has a caravan, like going back to stopping places, um, and why she felt more comfortable writing about World War One experiences than World War II, which is what she grew up after, like in the 50s, because her young adult experience was more similar to, no indoor bathrooms, and traveling on the farms to pick hops, that kind of thing, of like 30 years before, because they were disadvantaged. And so that was really cool to learn about. She also goes into, like family conflicts and how she was affected as a young girl by both of her parents' sort of traumas and how those were passed on. And so that was interesting too, just in terms of UK history and affecting what she chose to write about in her historical fiction. So personal interest that might be a little bit niche, but I loved her voice narrating her own memoir. It was really great. And then the last one I put in here because it's a great instance of using humor and hope in a bittersweet way. And that would be 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Humph. She is a writer who I think was like a playwright and freelance writer in New York City in the 60s, maybe 40s to 60s. And she publishes her letters, the beginning of her correspondence, when she's looking for books from a rare bookseller in London, before there was Amazon, before there was A Books, before there was half price books, all these things. She had to write to a rare bookseller in London because no one had the kind of books that she was interested in reading in New York City, if you can imagine. So she's got this correspondence with this rare bookseller over decades. And at first, it's very prim and proper because that's how the London people are being professional. And then her New York, I think, New York City background sort of blares through the line and will not be denied. And she gets more chummy with the booksellers, and they get to be friends through letters. And eventually she visits. But yeah, life intervenes, and that's the bittersweet part. But 84 Charing Cross Road is a really comforting read, and she has sequels. She has follow-up books written with her trademark New York City voice, and I've been trying to find those, but they are not as easy to find as this one, which was a huge blockbuster hit. So yeah, that is my memoir biography salute to People April, and I'm glad I participated in it. I had a couple books that I read that were memoir biography, and reviewed throughout the month at the beginning of May. So if you're interested in those, go back and check out those videos. Otherwise, oh, I get another comment. Yeah, Jim said 84 Charing Cross Road is a great bookish read. So yes, agree. That is all I have for you today. Thank you for joining. Like the stream, share it if you're curious about other people's opinions, and subscribe to the channel if you're new and you like me talking about nonfiction book reviews, historical fiction, and a little bit of supernatural. That's what I love to talk about. Also, diversify that reading list. It's Asian Readathon month, and the one I'm reading right now that I read some of this morning is The Phoenix Crown by Kate Quinn and Janie Chang. I'm going to be speaking to Leah Lindemann about this book. We're going to be buddy reading and trading thoughts as historical fiction authors. It's about the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco. So another one of those books to add to my list. But yeah, so diversify those books. Tell me what you're reading. And if you missed the beginning of this, drop in the comments a way that you get yourself out of feeling like a failure. That would be a big help right now. All right. Thanks, everyone. Happy reading.